Right, this landscape this time then, and I'm going to mark it off the same, my quarters, halves and eighths, just so I know where things are going. The scale is slightly different because the paper's slightly squarer. I couldn't go any larger, I wanted to, but for the board I've got a large enough drawing board for a larger paper. I don't do many this size. Right then, here we go. So we've got this paper marked with this, and that hill there comes in here. I'm just going to discuss how I do the drawing as well. Bottom of this hill is just about on line with halfway here, and finishes about an eighth of the way in, so 1/4 eighth, so about here. So we've got this hill coming down, lovely shape, all the way in a nice curve to about there. This base plane here is about 1/3, that's just under 1/3. If I go into thirds there, and that's going to be in between that and a half, and right here that's the base plane going on there. A nice composition. Coming from here there's a gentle hill that comes down, and the centre of the picture is about here as well, so we're not far out on that. Let's look at this here, that beautiful line there that comes down, just gently curls all the way into here, and we've got a plane coming in there. This mountain comes behind, soft clouds and things. We did this recently with watercolour. Now we're going to see how to do these softer clouds with pastel here. Now we're going to get this mountain, and that one, it's almost halfway up here. So if I come across there, I shouldn't be far off there. Where does it finish here? Well, we've got to come up from here, haven't we, anyway? So if I come up, that's my angle there. Right, there's our basic structure. Again, on the quarter here, just above it, comes down where these flowers come. Where do they come from? Here on the quarter mark there. So you can see how I'm doing the drawing, just so I'm working it out according to the quarters. And only roughly, we're not going to be exact, you don't need to be photographic with it. Round behind. Now I've got to find these. There's this lovely curve going on here I want to find. So we've almost got our composition now. Things are going to go. Traditional way of working then, just working out our midtones, our light, drawing on here, and we're going to work up the underpainting by rubbing, scrubbing, blocking and then blending, and then we work the fresh colour on top finally without touching it further so as not to destroy it, keep it nice and bright and clean. And that will be the traditional way of blocking and blending. Right, those bunch of flowers come down literally below that lump there, so down here. And then the actual composition of the clouds in the sky is rather nice on this one. I want to really push the colours on this when I come to it. We'll just work out where these clouds are coming for the moment. Just so I know where my colours are going to go. I'll work this in very quickly. I mean, I'm working now as quickly as I would if I was actually doing the landscape on plein air. There we go, that's ready to draw. As we go. So let's first of all take a close look at this, which is a canson paper, and just what happens when we blend these pastels before we actually start. So just watching this then, Beverly, we're going to use a deeper pastel first. Now this is the fresh pastel. You can see how lovely and bright that is. But if I rub it, it dulls down immediately. Okay. We can leave the paper glowing through like that.
So you've got an undercolour. Now this is useful if you're doing a technique like constables where you want the browns to show through. So with pastel, that all papers change colour, even the best of them, will eventually go lighter with light. So I prefer to use either paint underneath or rub pastel in to give my colour. So that's the first point. Right, so we've rubbed that colour in there. If we put the same colour over the top, you can see how it goes brighter, slightly brighter in that area. And the same if we're using brighter colours over that. If I put a brighter colour into that, then it's nice and bright and clean. If I blend it, it kills it immediately. So I would want to come back over that. Now scumbling is where we just bring the pastel over the surface, letting the undercolour glow through. So that way we can get a colour that won't go brighter later and bleach out. We can let the pastel glow through and hopefully the pastels will remain. We have actually tested even these unison pastels, and in bright sunlight even they fade slightly. So you don't want to have pictures in bright sunlight, but that's scumbling. Feathering is short strokes like this, and you can cross hatch by cross feathering across. So we've got several techniques we're going to use there with the texturing, the same way as dots and dashes. So if I wanted to have clean pure pastel over this and my final coats of leaves, then you can see how brightly I can go on top by clean colour at the end, and there you've got the blocking and the blending and the finishing coats over the top, and that's what we're just about to do. So that's your first basics in the blocking and blending method. The first thing I've got to do is get Beverly to catch up with me and just get her basic drawing done. We've taken a look at the earlier part of this video already, and I've shown her how we can use the quarters and eighths on the paper here to start off finding where things come. So we've got the halfway point here, and then that mountain comes down to that halfway point there. So you've got your pastels here, your photograph there, and you've got your drawing. There's plenty of drawing there. That's just ready to make a start. It's only a few minutes, so I already see that your abilities are quite good, and I think you'll manage to keep up with me. Unfortunately, we've got the rain in the background again, which I know one of my students actually likes, but some of you might find it a bit of a nuisance. But I don't want to put radio mics and everything up today. So usually I start with the horizon area. The reason I do that, Beverly, is because the horizon is usually the mid-tones. I'm going to work up all of my mid-tones here and go downwards to the darks. Right, that's my blocking and blending just done in that bit. I'm going to carry on down and start blocking in the blues and so on down here. And I'm just building up these by blending one to another. Yeah, you're blending where you need. I mean, if you feel that something is right, you leave it alone, but if it's not quite, then you just blend it in by blending the scumble in a fraction. Now, what I was saying about not going too dark, because we're going to go lighter onto it, if I now come back with some lighter creams, I actually take some very light cream and start to put that in to these. And the light shining around the edges of them. And lighter still, as I say, I come back to that very light, almost white. Are you ready there? Ready for the mountains?
I think so.
Look at that green dust to the sky here, you see. I mean, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Pulling up those turquoises. Right down into here.
Okay, let's see.
Right, then into that, I can start to, there's a lovely soft blue. Again, I can do my shading behind there as well when I'm at it. Now you see how I can go quite hard edged. If that's the soft, now putting fresh pastel on, I can come in with these lovely deep darks. I can just feather and blend softly, or I can go, so I can blend it like that, or I can come in harder like that. And blocking and then blending in to give my underpainting. The dominant colour I think here for me is this deeper mid-green. Is rather fun.
That was a getting to learn.
You're
Getting
coming
to
on.
know. I also talk to myself
That's good.
while I work.
Yeah, well, I do all the time. I do in life actually. Yeah. I get a better conversation that way normally as well. As I say, you can't see wood for trees, but once you've got the blocking and blending done, you can start to see how your colours really are. And we can get the feeling of a lot of texture and detail in the foreground here by, again, the blocking and blending method. It's a technique that I use quite a bit with acrylics as well, where I put dark blocks of background in and start to texture up. And for the final lighter colours, we have to really twist and push the pastel to get pure colour achieved. It's these last highlights that just finish things off now, because that's what we're working on now. Well, for me, I'm about there on that one, I think. Let's see how you're doing. And there we are, the effects of light, clouds, into the sky.
I was trying to dampen down these with the little blue
Yeah,
and
a lovely sky. Well, there we are. Beverly's just finishing off hers now, and I think I've gone as far as I'm going to go with this one. So we'll just capture Beverly in a moment with hers. She's done really well. And then, so only a couple of hours work, so it shows how rapid this technique is. We're going to move on to doing a big acrylic in the rollers. Beverly's finished that, and for a first go at that method, very good, beautiful colours, nice light. I hope she's happy. Are you happy, Beverly?
yes, yes. I'm very pleased with it.
Good. Well, we'll move on then.
Sorry.
Well done.
It's
That's
very
the first
good.
one here, and it's
Yeah.
only taken us a couple of hours. Good morning. Well, a new box has arrived yesterday. Present for me, almost as good as Christmas. Unison Pastels. I love them. They've been my favourite pastels for most of my artistic career. I do use other ones. I use some cheaper inscribes and colours that are harder. Some of the harder pastels, the harder the pastel, usually the lesser the quality. So soft pastels usually have much better quality and are more expensive. But the hard pastels sometimes are necessary. For most of the work I do, I like soft pastels. And they're really, for me, are only two on the market. There are many makes of pastels, very well-known pastels, but they're usually much smaller in paper, and I need pastels that I can take the paper off and use in much larger, looser ways. So I use quite a lot of different pastels, but my favourite and top of the list are the Unisons, in fact. There are some very other good pastels on the market, budget pastels, but for me, for all of these years, these are the most consistent, and they have beautiful darks as well. I've recently managed to get another company to bring some more darks in, but they're still not quite as soft as I need yet, because I tend to use pastels in very versatile ways. I tend to use them with water as well, and for that we need a very soft pastel. Now, for the very bright colours of pastel, we usually do have to buy the cheaper pastels, because most of the companies don't do fluorescent or very bright pastels. For instance, if I open this little box here, and you can see it's a well-used box, and all of the papers have been taken off from all of the covers, there are some very bright pastels in this range. If I just show you close up, you can see bright garish pinks and other bright colours that I've got in here, which you cannot get with the normal ranges of pastels. And you'll see there then that I've taken off the papers off the pastels, because when they come like that. Absolutely gorgeous, absolutely beautiful, aren't they?
almost ashamed to use them. One doesn't really want to. It's nice to have just a display box like that. But, dare I say it, I'm going to have to remove all of these outside paper covers from my pastels, because if you want to use pastels fully, you need to be able to use them with the outside edge as well, not just the tips. So, nuisance as it is, and disappointing in a way because it looks so attractive that way, if I leave those papers on, I know that I'm going to just use the tips and I won't be loose enough with them. Well, it saves you getting your fingers messy, of course. You don't get the mess onto your fingers so much that way, but really that doesn't bother me too much. So I will remove all those papers shortly, having photographed them already. Here's the full list of pastels that I use. Here's the full series. And I'll do it bit by bit. Here's the whole sheet. And then here's single parts of it bit by bit, so you get a very good idea. And you'll see in this box that I advise, I've got, showing you there, I've got 4 whites and 4 blacks in, because we do tend to use some more of the darks. I do tend to mix some darks, I do tend to have some deep colours and blacks down there, but I also have some very deep purples in that set, deep browns and deep blues as well. And I find that with this particular set, I can do absolutely every subject there is. I mean, I've got all my warm and cool yellows, my turquoises, my warm and cool blues, right through to the purples and the deep mauves and the different greens. I think, you know, it's a lot of money to spend out for somebody to invest in many ways, but they will last a good long time, and depending on the techniques you're using as to how long they last. For instance, if I use them on watercolour paper with water, I don't use as much because I stain the paper very quickly and they tend to give a good ground for the overpainting, because once they've been mixed with water they're fixed. So, but if I was using them on glass paper or a technique like that, I would use an awful lot more, and it eats it up, literally sucks it up. So if you're using the pastel in the Old English method, block and blending on, say, an Ingres paper or a pastel paper, it doesn't use quite as much. On watercolour paper with water, not quite as much. Not too much on a velvet paper, but it does use a lot on the rougher papers and papers such as glass paper. So there we are. We've got different sorts of pastels. We've got the cheaper ones, the inscribes and the bright colours, which are the harder ones, so they can be very useful. And if I were going to use those, I'd normally use them towards the end, because if you use them on wet paper or damp paper, they'll tear the surface, they'll cut it in like a knife, whereas these soft ones won't. Remember that all pastels are basically is gum arabic with some pigment, a bit like watercolour, but it's a coarser watercolour. So they're only semi-transparent, or they're fairly opaque paints if they're used with water. But they are much more versatile than you think, pastels. So if we use pastel with water at first and then let it dry, we can build up layers afterwards, they'll be fixed, and we can use the harder inscribes or the cheaper pastels at the very end when the paper is dry. You can use them over other mediums as well. I use them over acrylic inks or over even thin acrylic paint on watercolour paper. I use acrylic inks and then work the pastels over the top of those bright acrylic inks to get really vibrant flower scenes and so on. We can be mixed media with them, but of course they have to go on to a matte surface. You do need a surface with a bit of a bite to it. Remember that most pastel papers have an orange peel side and a smoother side. It isn't the orange peel side you normally use unless you want that orange peel effect, which can be rather distracting. The bite is no different. The orange peel surface on a pastel paper is not the bite of the paper. The bite of the paper is the actual surface itself. So I mean, in watercolour paper I often use a hot press, and it takes the pastel perfectly well, especially with water, especially once you've given a ground of pastel as well. Remember that hardly any paper is light fast or colour fast, that they will change in the sunshine. So if you're going to use a coloured pastel paper, then later on the colour values might change. So it might be wiser in many cases to use a paint or an ink over the surface, or even block and blend over the surface with a pigment that won't change as easily. I have done tests with most pastels, I have done tests with unisons, And even these high quality pigments will change slightly if left in direct sunlight. You try this sometime, put some paint and some pastels onto a piece of paper and then cover half of it and leave that in the sunlight for a few weeks and just see, direct strong sunlight, just see if the colours change slightly. It will happen. Of course you're not really meant to leave paintings in strong sunlight, it's not a good idea anyway. When you hang them on a wall you don't want to be in direct sunlight. But you know, they will fade. So I'm suggesting that if you're going to want a coloured background for your pastels, that you don't really want to use the papers, because they will fade, although it is very acceptable, that you might want to tint a paper with paint or acrylic inks, or even use a wash of pastel finely rubbed in, or with water even, so that it dries as a ground. Just tips to give you. Bits of your old pastel when you're finished with them, especially if it's the same sort of pastel. Not a good idea to do this with mixing pastels, but keep the same types of pastels. If you've got little bits left over, grind them all up into a powder and then mix with a little water and roll them into a sausage, and you'll find that when it dries out, you'll have another grey to your pastels. You won't have wasted all the bits and pieces. It will make another pastel because the pigment is only the gamma bit which mixes with water, which is why we can use them with water. They're water soluble. So here we are then. The range that I advise, the range that I suggest of my unison pastels, absolutely gorgeous things. So yes, we can get cheaper pastels, we can get more budget pastels, but for the highest quality out and for value for money, I think we cannot beat the unisons actually. There are smaller pastels which are equally as good, but they aren't as nice and big as chunky as these are. Remember that also these are made in England, they're made in Yorkshire, so it's nice to buy from home as well, isn't it? They also come in these attractive boxes. Now you can get the smaller boxes and you can buy, many people have their own sets, preference sets that they like. I possibly will look at a set of these, doing a smaller set later to advise, because I know this is a lot of money to spend out on a big set. So we could go down just to a very basic set, and I'll look at doing that later. And we'll see if we can advise you just a basic set to buy to keep you going, to get you started. Basic primary colours would do, wouldn't they? But remember, there are many colours that you cannot mix, and that is the point of using some of these cheaper ones here, which are more fluorescent, because you cannot mix those colours. You know, they have to be pure and bright. And if you want these really bright colours for flowers and things, that's when you're going to need them. Okay, I'll put together a little basic set for you in just a moment, and we'll photograph that. And this is a quick introduction, and there are many, many films I've got on here on my YouTube channel, which show the use of pastels and show it in all of those different ways as well. And of course, from my own website, peterwoodarts.com, you can go to my link on my films and you will find I've got entire foundation videos on the use of pastels, two discs at a time, double discs and so on, where I show example after example of different ways of working with these pastels. So you've got the free films on here, and then you've got the more advanced ones on the high quality DVDs that I produce as well. That is of sunsets. As the sun goes down 10 minutes at a time, maybe produce 6 or 8 of these as the sun gradually goes down. That's in a standard Ongres pad that size. Here's a couple of them now. These were done in series as the sun went down over Loch Lomond. Done this many, many times, 10 minutes literally, using these techniques. This is block and blend. Equally, using water and pastel is very, very quick as well. So these methods are very, very fast, work very, very loosely at first, as I tend to do, and then tighten up at the end, and that's completely up to you then, isn't it? You're in control. Right, here you are, here's some examples. Perhaps it might be helpful if I went through some of my colours with you. You can actually see the numbers on here now. I've put them almost in order of my preference. If you were going to need to buy pastels, and what I would suggest, and I would work with going upwards here. Remember that there are many colours in life that you cannot mix. They need to come directly from being produced. In other words, some pinks and so on and turquoises, very hard to actually make. So although we can make most of our colours using this series here, for instance we can make the orange here by using those two, it is much brighter and clearer to have the pastels straight off and clean and much cleaner. So I'm starting off here with the white, which just says white, and then there's their black, which is grey 36. This lovely rich red, which is like a cadmium red, which is the A15. There's a middle yellow, like a cadmium yellow here, the A12. Then there's the ultramarine blue, or it's sort of in between cobalt and ultramarine here, the BV12. And I have an awful lot of these different turquoises. I find them really, really useful for cool greens in both foliage, grasses, and also in tropical seas and the Caribbean and so on. We get some wonderful variations of cools and warm blues in colours. I like this. I like the difference. I need the difference in my cool and warm colours. We go then to a cooler yellow, it's a cream, and a strong bright leaf green, which is the green 29. So we've got the Y6 for the cream there, green 29 there, A36 for a deep purple, A43 for a very deep green, then a Venetian red or burnt sienna if you like, RE11, and then a nice very light blue, because we're going to need that for skies and for highlighting, BG6. Then there's a lovely rich pink here, red 11. We come down to a very deep blue, which we're going to need, BV18. An orange here, A13. A light purple, BV5. And of course you're going to need yellow ochre, Y2. We've got a whole series of greys amongst my collection here. If I come up a bit, you can see the variety of greys I've got, which range from the cool greys to the warmer greys, so the cool bluer grey there to the warmer grey here, to a very warm grey there, and through to the much bluer greys there. So a great variety of greys for skies, and some of the background landscape work as well. So come back down to these again. Worked our way through now to these different greys, the cooler and warmer greys as we go on. Great for skies and of course certainly for landscapes. A warmer cream, a much warmer cream still, a little red added to it. A mid-green here, that's green 26. Got grey 26 there, but all of these will be listed. T6, A49, green 21. Come through to our mid-foliage green 26 here, T6, A49, the very deep blue here, very, very deep blue, that one, very, very handy blue. And we'll come across to our lighter green here. It's not as bright as the one we had earlier, but green 28, a very useful one. And the various blues we've got, working in between the turquoises and the grey blues. We've got BG7 there, BG5, and a mid blue here, which is more like a cobalt blue. Then we've got the more turquoise, BG8, and again a warmer cream, A7, T1 here for a deep green turquoise, great for those shadows in leaf structures. And this very bright orange, which is a very useful one for us for flowers especially, or for sunlight over landscape, Y9. A5, a nice light purple, grey 11s there, A14, a much brighter red, almost a scarlet rather than the cadmium red we saw earlier, a lovely light cream, Y5. Moving up here again to our various greys, and we've got the difference in the warm and the cool greys here. You see ranging from the cooler bluer greys going through to greener and browner greys here. Look at the variety of those. We've got grey 32, grey 3, grey 5, grey 33, BGE, so a blue grey, 7, BG12, A41 is a much warmer browner grey, Y18 a nice golden cream, grey 9 there, a nice blue grey, and a much warmer, more purpley grey 8, A44, and green 13 there, a green greys, a mid-deep green. But going up above it, and a very important one to have here, green 1, which is a nice lovely deep rich almost viridian green, coming across here to green 27.
Coming back to my deeper blues here, A50 and A49 for the deeper blues, for shadows and backgrounds. Coming across then to pinker reds, very useful, warm rose reds, red 6, red 12, and a very important one here which possibly could be down lower, but a lovely rich burnt umber B18, and then a whole series of turquoise here is again BG14, T5, T2, T4, and up here just one more turquoise to go, B10, and then we're back to our whites, except for one here which is grey too, so a slightly more off-white cream. Right, there's all my basics of all I ever need. This set will do everything you want. So you can make the choices of which colours you want from that to make up your own sets. Again, I'm suggesting that the basic sets are here, and as I go up, then there'll be more colours that I'm going to definitely need. But possibly the BE18, the brown, needs to be down amongst these. Right, this will probably make more sense to you now. We can see the colours without all the bits of paper on them. And you can see the various colour hues as we go through from the warmer to the cooler blues. Here the greener tint of grey blue, a lighter pale sky blue there, and then the much richer down here, ultramarine blue and so on. But what I did want to show you up here was these cheaper, brighter pastels, and you can see what I mean about these very bright, cheaper sort of inscribed colours, or the cheaper pastels which supply us with these bright fluorescent colours that you can't get at the moment in the more expensive ones, and different situations in which they can be used as well. I'll show you one or two shots of my using them all around the world, from volcano tops to painting the Matterhorn to working in snow. There's all sorts of ways we can use them. I even remember using some in Norway with water, and the water was freezing onto the paper with snow and making some wonderful effects when it actually melted out and dried later. Gave an effect you can't get in any other way, so perhaps worth experimenting and exploring with. Looking for a place to do a pastel this morning. Sun's in my eyes here, which is a bit of a nuisance. I do like the idea of this track going down here on the left and the way the lane goes down here. We're painting into the sun here, which is a bit of a nuisance, but could be quite fun as well with colours. A lovely position here, looking right down this lovely road into the distance. This tree on the left framing it, and then one on the right over there I'm going to try and get in. So I've got to work my composition out carefully first. Got my favourite pastels, the unisons, with me. We're going to do the Old English block and blend method today on pastel paper, on Ongus paper. Well, you don't get a much nicer situation than this, do you? Beautiful view here, and
It's not too hot, but the cloud is coming over a bit. Once that sun comes through that cloud, it's going to be a lot brighter. We'll give it a go and see if we can get the atmosphere and the drawing of this. Now, the first and most difficult part is just to work out the composition here, because I've got to get everything in. And I'm going to use a light pastel. Doesn't matter which colour really, but a light pink just to get me started. Try and make a frame with my fingers and just see how much I'm going to fit in. And that then carries on right through. I hope I can get it all in, because I do need to get the whole of this composition in to make this work. There we go. Well, I think I've got everything that I want to get in now there like that, but it's quite small scale, so I'm going to be working on little bits of colour here and there at this rate. Now we'll start with the sky, and I do want quite a pink sky actually, so blocking and blending, I'm going to put this same pink right the way through here at the moment and block it in, blend it in. Blend, you see how it kills the pastel, so remember with pastel we need to put the last coats on freshly. We don't want to have fixative or smudged pastel. We want it clean and bright. You see how bright that is when I put it on, and don't smudge it. And that's what we need to have. We need to have fresh, bright pastel. And I don't want to lose my edges. Right, so that's ready now to start working my colours over. Very light blue, I mean. So I'm going to bring this pastel over here, right through and round this tree here. I'm going to blend that in again. I want to lose this pastel paper. Very rapid way to work with pastel. This blocking and blending I can turn paintings out in 10 minutes or so on a sunset when I really get going on this. So a lovely blending there. Now you see that I'm going to leave that pastel here as fresh. I don't want to change that at all. Blend that down and through and in, just scumbling over the surface lightly to get this beautiful effect of the broken colour, of one colour shining through another. And I don't know as I'm going to use a blue up the top here. I may use a warmer blue, but I might be better off actually using a pink on it to bring it back. There we go, we're getting that lovely light of the French sky against the turquoise. Just blend that. I know it's killing it back by blending it back, but I also want to keep a soft effect of tone here. So a little bit of very light green into the sky just there to play. Now, we've got light cream. It's almost a light white and yellow ochre. It's a very warm light cream. Just a little bit of that coming in the distance here. This French sky. It's a very Monet sky today. It comes up light here. And there we have a lovely light Monet sky. A tree to do yet. That's one of the beauties of pastel, of course. We can put light over dark. I'm just going to take a little bit of lighter colour. Just little bits of light. Right, distance here, and we've got blue greys, sky there. I need to go to a lighter pink to turquoise again, so I'll take the pink I was using earlier and just start to blend that across here a bit, to soften it down. Again, I'm blocking and blending. I'm just putting on my colour and then smudging it, and then I'm going back over again to give a bit of fresh colour. That goes all the way down, curves down to there. Double line of where that track goes around there somewhere. I have to narrow this down a bit. I'm starting to squeeze things in so much to get the scale in. The lights around that in just a moment. Let's just get them blocked in and blended. And this is where you can start cutting into the lights with your darks. So I've got some darks in here now, and I want to start getting the effects of the lights against them with this horizon here. As the light comes in between and through these bits of tree and here. And once I can get all of these colours established, then I know I can really play, as I say, with the colour in the background here. And the feeling of all of these leaves here without actually drawing them all in. Let me start to put the lights back in over this is a warmer green, just to get the feeling of the tree coming up closer to us. Just highlighting the ends of the branches. Lovely warm green. Look at the cooler one behind in just a moment. Blend it in at the moment to get the feeling of where we are. Round bales here that I'm just going to start on. One down there. Across here. And one just here. Bring in some mid-warm greys. You don't see me work with pastel much, but I'm going to do a bit more, I think, coming weeks. And suddenly our picture starts to appear. It's great. Watch out for these colours. I mean, really look for colour. I'm trying to find in this straw bale not just straw colours, but the colours that actually are reflecting here, warm to cool. It only takes one mark, just one mark, to suddenly change things. So if I take some really deep blue now, there's a shadow on the round bales in the background there. I've got 6 pastels in my hand to offload them. Let's start to look at these stronger colours here. Going on behind here. Giving highlights here and there. Can we get this over here? There's this beautiful little curl of the. I don't think I'm going to get it light enough with that path, the road going into the distance there, and the way that the leaves are shining here. Dots and dashes of leaves shining. So we're almost finished as a pastel. I mean, we could stop at that, but I want to bring up a bit more of the colours yet. And play these cools against warms just a bit more on the lovely warms, cools that we've got here. Yet haven't been fully explored yet. Oui, c'est chaud, hein? Bien.
Voilà, vous êtes dans les ronces. Voilà, que c'est beau ça.
Si voulez-vous regarder mes autres tableaux, il y a une exposition à la papeterie Martineau.
Oui, oui.
8 artistes là. J'ai une grande exposition là. Je peinture beaucoup maintenant avec le bon soleil, le bon météo.
Et votre appareil photo, monsieur, c'est...
Oui, oui, je filme. J'ai un projet. J'ai donné une carte. Avez-vous l'internet ici? Avez-vous un ordinateur avec l'internet?
Oui.
Oui. J'ai une carte ici. J'ai beaucoup de films en YouTube. 600 films.
Yes.
Je filme ici la nature, la pêche, les papillons.
Ah, vous êtes à la Renaud-Champ?
Oui, oui, juste ici. Juste téléphone.
Ok,
Okay.
Bye.
Good day.
Au revoir. The difference between the warms and cools to get the foreground effects as well. Adding more warmth up to here. Got some beautiful little yellow flowers I haven't put in yet. I think I don't want to overdo them, but they are here. Just coming in cools into the leaves here. A little bit of black into the foreground. Just to start bringing out these. There's some lovely seed heads that are growing here. Now, do I need to do much more with that? Maybe a few little highlights of greens in the background, that's all I can see. Maybe a little bit more cream just into there as well, we'll see in a moment. And those beautiful unison pastels, which are so fun to use. So there we go, a little bright pastel. So I hope to do a few more on watercolour paper of this lovely view here, which we've got in completely. Just what a pleasure to do. Well, there we are then, finished piece, our first pastel this season. A bit more pastel paper, so I'm going to have to use water and pastel in the future, but I do love working with pastel, especially with these unisons, they're lovely. Well, I'm going to try and have a go at this composition here and take a bit in. The idea is to paint very quickly and strongly with the watercolour first of all, and then maybe use pastel over the top afterwards. So let's see how we get on with this. So I want to be quite strong with our, this tape's going to come off in the sun, quite strong with our paint if I'm going to use pastel over the top. So I'll start with wet into wet. Let's have a look at yours now and see what we can do. Again. Okay, so I've got a basic of watercolour on. I'm going to have a go now at the pastel over the top. Unfortunately, there's a thunderstorm right overhead. We'll hear thunder in a minute. If it starts to rain, we're going to have to make a run for it, but I prefer to have sun on this. So I haven't got it at the moment. What I wanted to show you is how we can build up these colours over the top here with pastel.
Right.
Like
I
this.
get a shock at the bright colours that come out.
only just dry enough. I prefer it to be
What?
a bit drier. Talking to the camera, I prefer it to be a bit drier.
Sorry. Oh my goodness. Goodness.
Isn't it exciting? Isn't it fun?
Oh, I don't. Yeah, it doesn't worry me. I'm just wondering about the paints.
Does it?
No, what? Sorry.
You can see I can use the light pastel over the top,
Yeah.
you see. So you can bring these colours back and blend them or put them straight over the watercolour and let the watercolour just glow through. You don't want to totally whack your watercolour out. Let it use it. Maybe it doesn't. It's fun.
Oh wow, it looks fantastic now.
You see what I mean? You know, you can work very quickly and bring these colours out. You know?
That's very dark.
Which means now if you look at these lights, for instance, I can go back now. Say with watercolour I couldn't do this, but I can now go back into this
Oh yeah.
and start making these lights,
So
which
pretty.
are nice and quick to get. I can now come back in with these
looks
lovely
great.
bright colours and
But
bring
now-
them back. It's a lovely way to get colour going in my painting. You can actually draw with the pastel. But I mean, this gives you an effect, look, straight away. You've seen this one as far as I've got. Now,
Yeah,
I've pulled
it's
it back
great.
together again. So now it's a matter of pulling out the light. What I really need now is for the weather to brighten up and we get the sunshine, and I can really put the colours back in detail over the top. You should have ordered better weather. If you come here as your guest and you don't have good weather, it's not... Now you see I'm putting some light blue on here amongst this warmth to pull the warmth out. So you think something's just going to be, you think it's pink, that's it. It's not. It has one colour next to it, which has another colour going on to bring it out. So immediately the sun comes out, I've got my darks here, which is why I'm saying you need your darks in. And I can now bring the highlights of the light out, the texture over the top, which when it's flat you just don't see them. But you know, it gives a lovely effect. So straight away we've got the sun coming and we can start to find these light colours.
Yeah, I think it's great.
You see how we can work with this, and it's the two ways. Now some purists will say, well, it's not pastel and it's not watercolour.
Oh no,
But what the hell, it's what it is, you know. And why shouldn't we experiment and explore? And
more coming. Okay. Actually, my arm's funny. I can't do that. Oh, really hurts. I twist it.
I was saying, Anne-Marie,
What?
that many French prefer that you try and speak some French than not, you know. They don't laugh at you. If you try, they prefer you try.
Did you put your red roses in, or you did that later? Did you?
I've done them at the end. I mean, you know, all the watercolours got to go in first. And then you do the other texturing, and then and the grasses and everything else. But the bright colours go on at the end, yeah. All of your light,
No, I'm
final
doing
bright
bright
colours
now.
go at the end. Don't try and put the bright colours, the roses, everything in now. I mean,
Okay. Oh, I thought people sprayed and then kept working.
you can do, but it's not really a good idea because you get just too much grey and powder.
Everybody else had Uber drivers driving up to the door.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going
You
to
rub
just
yours
chat.
up the wrong way as you do with cafe owners.
Me? And then he dumped me at the metro instead of the CNF, what it's called. That was the start of that long, epic journey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I'm just waiting for this sky really, although I quite like the sky.
Oh, I'd leave the sky. Might be a bit pale.
Well, we're going to attempt this lovely landscape here today, and what I want to do is take in this scene with this dead cow pasture in the foreground through to the poppies and so on in the background. I want to do a bit more of the sky today, of the landscape, and we've got one of my students with me. You've seen her on film before. We've got 2 sets of pastels, got our acrylic inks. We're going to do a basic wash with acrylic inks today, and then put the pastels over the top and use water and so on over the top of that. So rather an exciting time we're going to have. Let's get on. Okay, we've set out the acrylic inks and we're going to do a simple base coat of that. Just put in my medium tones and dark tones to work the colours over. So I'm not going to work out a composition. I'm going to straight away take my inks and I'll just use the brush lightly just to indicate what I'm going to want for a composition first. Very, very lightly. I think I want about one third sky, so my sky is going to be about there, and I've got a lovely bunch of poppies down here. Just want to indicate things, just a little bit of thin down paint, just so I know where I am basically. So I want my sky to come across here, and there's a lovely little bit of trees coming there, coming up through here. Now I do want those trees there and that bush there, just so I know where I am. Coming forward here, then down here I've got this lovely cow parsley. So that's it, that's all I'm going to need. Now I just establish where things are. Right, I need to make some greys first. I want to get some lovely dark colour on there, so I'm going to mix a little bit of purple with some brown and blue, and I'm going to put my greys over this in a minute and just whack on this colour, this wash of ink quite thinly at first. Not going to paint wet into wet, but straight in there. Lovely deep colours. Even a green through here. So I'm going to put the greys over the top. Completely up to you what colours you use, but I want a nice dark colour to start with here. And I'm going to put my paints over the top of that, my pastels over the top of that, and come down to the distance. And we've got these distant hills and trees. Working downwards, so I've got the paint flooding down here. Seems quite weird at the moment, but when I put the colours on it'll make sense to you. Not quite sure what's happening here with this paper. Some cheaper practice paper I've purchased, but there's funny marks happening there, but I wouldn't be happy if that was just a watercolour. We'll see. With the pastel over the top it won't matter so much. In the background, way over here, we've got these distant trees, and then coming in here I've got a bush there and bushes and trees here, just so I know where I am. Other little bushes and trees coming across way in the background there. It's a very wet sort of day, damp, misty. Get these stronger greens of those bushes coming in I want there. Very, very strong, quite abstract in a way. And when we're doing things like this, sometimes it's amazing. We turn out something that we don't expect and we just want to leave it alone. So we'll put that in there, coming right down here. Notice a bit more orange down here, a bit more yellows right through here. Got this flooding of different textures and grasses right down through here. Lovely yellow green that's happening there, and already we've got quite a fun picture, although I sound worried about these marks here. I want to establish some of these poppy marks going on, some reds going on amongst the field here. Let's get some of these poppies just started in there. I'm going to do them as a block rather than could be very strong with the acrylic ink block. It's too slightly transparent, but I don't have to be. Those poppies coming right through there, there's poppies coming up here into the foreground, right down through here. Something I have got with me today is a water diffuser. You must keep the paint wet. If it gets dry, then you lose your soft wet and wet effect, so use a diffuser as well. It's much warmer, some of these colours coming through here. Right down through, the yellow's going back up into there. And then we can work the colours over that in a moment. Deeper green down here. Letting it just flood, giving us off all these lovely deep tones, textures to work within. Quite abstract at first, great fun to do, but you know, very, very loose, and that's what you're noticing. I'm painting very, very loosely here. Much more turquoise going on here. I'm leaving these dark dead cow parsley at the moment. Still working. Yeah. I've almost got my basic, more abstract shapes in the background. You add a little bit of purple now to the brown and start to find it's this cow parsley. They're just starting here. Purple and brown, purple and red to make the brown. Get these lovely loose effects, and right up and through. The other bits of cow parsley are coming up through here. So that's about it, just a very, very loose abstract, just to give me a base for my pastels to go onto, which is great fun. Okay, now I'm going to start working the pastel into this. It's drying already, even though it's a very damp day. And of course I want to get my greys going first of all. So I'm able now to work my colours over the top. Let's see what sort of greys I'm going to need. We want some lighter greys at first. I'm using this practice watercolour paper of the SAA. And again, we're experimenting, we're exploring. It's a knot paper, although it's more like almost like a hot press. If it's scumble over the top, look, you get all these lovely light greys with this other grey I've got glowing through from behind. And nothing to stop us from using water with that. even though my water's a bit green now, I can blend those greys in at first to get more of this grey sky effect. We're using mixed media here, and of course that's going to dry lighter later, one of my favourite sayings. So we'll just use that a little bit more thickly just to tint that grey in. There we go. We're using mixed media then, acrylic ink underneath, now water and pastel. I'm going to use the texture of the brush strokes, use some dry pastel, some soft, let that drop a bit of those. I don't know what I'm doing. And now take some slightly warmer grey into that. And let's blend that with our fingers. Let that dry a bit, and in the meantime, whilst that's drying, we go back, start to look at some of these other warm colours that are happening through this lovely sky. There's a variety of warm and cool greys, and one won't show unless I do the other. So if I want cool to show, I've got to make something warmer for that to really work. You can start to see it starting to work now. A little bit of the warmth of the sky just starting to glow through here. A little bit more yellow, in other words, here. Just keeping it dead at the moment. It's a very grey day, and I want that sort of grey deadness coming through. I want this soft light today just glowing through here. There we go. Now in the distance, we'll start looking at these lovely green greys of the distance here. Got some slightly stronger colours. Now we've got trees coming up there, bushes and so on coming through here, which is rather nice. Slightly warmer just there. Adding my colour over and using texture already. Let's have fun, let's experiment, let's explore. Nice bush coming up into the sky here. And the sky going slightly lighter behind there. These lovely distant colours, distant turquoises and blues are happening way over here, coming up behind. Greens, softer colours. See how quickly we can work. This is why I showed you this technique only recently when I did the poppies. A studio piece there, the last one with water and pastel with poppies, showing you how this technique can work. Look how lovely and loose, just impressionistic, just impressionist. The ears of corn coming through here. Glowing, even though it's a dull day. And I want to use my brush there again, so take the brush, dry it out a bit and just make it a bit rougher. I can start to get a bit more texture into these. Go down to a deeper green. So we've got some lovely deep greens just coming through here. Again, I'm going to need my water and brush in just a moment. Put more detail in later, so that what was a block of red now I've softened back. Just start to see the form of the thing starting to take place now. We're just getting some really lovely, lively colours going. And we go lighter and lighter, gradually bringing up our warmer colours. It's just such fun to do. It's such a pleasure to be out here doing this. You know, it's what it's about. We've got some lovely poppies happening down through here. We can start now to build up a few more details. That's lovely, some lovely colours going on, and I love the sky, nice and loose, nice and free, really, really good.
I'm going to see a concert when I'm in Germany.
Yeah? What?
Billy Idol. You remember him?
Sorry?
Billy Idol, do you remember him?
Vaguely. I think it's before my time because I'm younger than you.
No, you must know him.
Oh no,
That was
can't possibly.
not the right thing to say.
You haven't paid me yet, have you?
Exactly.
No, personally, sometimes you just get there and you don't want to go much further. I think for myself I'm almost done there. I don't wish to do much more on this picture. So, it's only taken me about an hour to do this, a bit less than that. And I think I'll probably finish at that. A little more ultramarine blue here and there just to bring out these reds. But there's a bit of vibrance. So I use two colours for the signature there as well because I don't like single colours. There we go, there's our scene. There we go, just showing the quick use of water and pastel and a little bit of acrylic ink to give a dark background immediately. Could have used just the pastel and water, but it's fun to use them both. And it'll really start to work. Those mid greens, mid and light green.
Bit of yellow.
I did that earlier. I think this is a case where it's not always where something is wrong where you think it is. We're looking at this area, but it may be that we get some much deeper blues and darker colours down here to make this recede more. And that's making the background recede more, which is what we wanted to do. No, I mean, it's quite orange in the background there. Maybe it should be lighter rather than darker. Maybe that's too dark.
Lighter.
Yeah, try the orange.
Softer.
So that we get the reds coming out into the green and the greens coming into the red there, so it links together.
Yeah,
That's better, yeah.
it is actually, yeah.
You agree?
Yes.
Teacher's right.
I don't have to agree with everything you say.
Yes you do,
Why?
because I'm the teacher. Right, well now you can see both the pictures together, and you see the one we've just done and the one I did in the studio. The technique is the same, the look is very similar, except the light is different of course, because this is evening and this is a dull day with the light just coming through. Obviously I prefer that one because the composition is nicer, it's more interesting anyway, but just for a 1 hour session and to show what the student did as well, in a much looser way in fact than mine. So I'm very pleased with the way she attained what she did, and she's happy too. It just gives you an idea of how we can use this rapid and loose technique using, in this case, acrylic ink as well as water and pastels. But we could have just done it with the water and pastels. Well, we're here now in Fresselines in the Fête de Mariage, and I've been asked to come here and demonstrate for small groups this afternoon over a couple of hours. If anybody even turns up, it's a bit of a loose end, we're not quite sure what's happening. So I was going to do, just to demonstrate water and pastel of the confluence, and we have another artist here with some lovely medieval work as well. In enamels, and I've got my other work around which Rosie will show you at the moment, so I can just talk about that. We only have 20 minutes each. Normally I take 2 hours to do a demonstration, so I've got 10 minutes to talk about the work and then 10 minutes to do a piece of the demonstration. What I've decided to do, as nobody's here yet, is just block in with the pastel onto a knot paper some of the colours, which I'll then put water onto when they arrive, and we'll start to demonstrate how this can work with lights over darks. So there we go, it's a bit of a loose end, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. And I'm just going to make the most of it and try and enjoy, and I've got Rosie as my camera lady today, which is good. So I won't be using water until they actually come. I'm just going to work out some of the colour. I put on some turquoise at the moment and greys, and I'm just working in some deep green that I know will go very dark when I put water with it. And I'm going to put some other darker colours onto this in a moment to make these go quite a deep purple, very, very strong. So that was a deep green. Now I'm going to use a purple into this to really start to get some depth into it. And when I mix water with this, the whole thing will make more sense. And then I can work one colour. The thing with pastel and water is that the water fixes the pastel. That it's like watercolour. C'est similaire de aquarelle. Les peintures et avec un colle similaire de aquarelle. C'est un bloc de pastel. And avec de l'eau, c'est fixé après. Fixé après. So it will be fixed after the water, and I can work other pastels over the top. Après, de l'eau est sec, c'est possible une autre couche de pastel. You move it back. And I can start to work out some other lighter colours as well. So into these turquoises I can start to put some greens and mix in as a melange with them. And that's about all I can do before anybody comes, really. The rest is going to be with the sky. They come. Now, the sky is almost white on here, but I want to get a really vibrant colour. So I'm just deciding what I'm going to use there. I think I'm going to start with a very light pink on the sky, like that. So I'll leave that colour ready to go. Let's just take a look at some of the other paintings I've got here. Bon, bah écoutez, merci beaucoup.
Actually, it's quite good looking at it from another angle.
Oui, j'ai peinture avec Volum et Pastels. Le premier pastel on était non en unison. De l'autre différence de cette pastel, touche ça.
Une explication, genre, un petit gros, il y a eu un petit creux, donc j'ai perçu, j'attendais. Mais il y a eu un petit creux, voilà, c'est ça.
C'est le moins cher.
Il y en a 2, 3, 5, 6.
C'est pas possible avec le l'autre, c'est possible.
Ah oui, c'est ça. Ah non, non, c'est vrai.
J'ai une exposition dans la papeterie maintenant aussi. Tu connais la papeterie?
Oui,
Il y a une grande exposition maintenant, 8 artistes là.
Pour mettre des médaillons moins travaillés.
You said you go as long as you can turn up, John.
Des urnes funéraires, ça
Après
des urnes funéraires.
donc, après votre exposition,
Donc là, ce modèle-là, je vais on
vous
peut faire
serez
pour les
bienvenus
animaux,
s'il
pour
vous
les
plaît à la
êtres
salle
humains.
polyvalente. Regardez
Donc là, il y a
le
des
film,
chiens.
Creuse Illusion.
Et on met le
Jeanne
chien.
des Olives.
Là, il y a une boîte
Donc
qui vient
moi, je suis
ici,
la secrétaire de
pour mettre ses
l'association.
cendres.
De ce film a été
Ou
réalisé
si c'est
que
des
par
animaux
des
qui
amateurs.
conservés, si c'est des
et
êtres
des
humains,
bénévoles.
on les cendres.
Donc
On les met
on
au
le
jardin
présente
de
aujourd'hui,
souvenir où on met la
ce soir
boîte.
à 19h.
Where is that village we go with medieval village? Cargolès, oui, medieval, l'église,
Ah oui.
Cargolès, Chumia aussi.
Oui.
Juro.
Beaucoup coloré surtout.
Ah, c'est
le volume, le coloris.
C'est très beau,
Merci.
c'est très très beau.
C'est vite, hein?
Oui, mais c'est très beau.
Du peinture au plein air, de lumière changeuse, nécessite de peinture au micro.
Ça ferait bien chez moi.
Le fini maintenant, je pense.
Oui.
Right, the demonstration piece today completed. We've had a few visitors and a bit of interest. It's been fun to do anyway. You see me paint this now with water and pastel, and I have a mount ready to go. Marie-Louise, put this on and we'll see how it looks. Well, there's a mount on it. Looks a bit blue in the camera, but actually it's a deep green. Gives you an idea when the picture's actually finished and mounted. Et voilà, le tableau est fini.
Ah oui, c'est beau. C'est joli, oui.
we are again, something different again today. I'm going to have a go at this black and white one that one of my friends has sent over. A lady who has been watching me on YouTube a while and is coming to visit me in Scotland later. And the lady, in fact, who sent me that lovely photograph of Ben Lomond recently that I did for you in a semi-abstract way. But I haven't done a drawing for a while, as in a full drawing. So I'm going to use charcoal, which you haven't seen me use. I don't think you've ever seen me use charcoal, in fact. And I'm going to do a very tonal piece on ordinary drawing cartridge paper, heavy cartridge paper, with a smooth surface. I may just use the charcoal only, but I may take it further into just tinting with a little bit of white chalk, because the effects are very different. If you just use charcoal on black paper, the charcoal is usually blacker than the black paper. If we mix white chalk with the charcoal, it gives a different sort of bluey grey, different tint altogether, if we're on white paper. And if the photograph is slightly tinted, as this one has a slight bluey tint in places, which will make the dark seem warmer, I may even tint him with a little cool as well. So we'll just play it by ear as we go along and have some fun, experimenting and exploring with charcoal and drawing. Let me show you what we're going to use. So I've taken a nice big piece of foam board here, which is nice and light. Take my cartridge paper to that, ready to go. And then down below here I've got a set of inscribed pastels, a harder pastels this time because the chalks and the charcoal are slightly harder. Box of charcoal, piece of white chalk, and there we are, ready to go, simple as that. Oh, and of course I shall need a bit of rubber, and maybe to rub out a bit or blend with the rubber rather than use my fingers. We get a much smoother effect of shading by using the rubber with pencil or with charcoal. You can blend it in more with that. Just take a look at the different prints of this even. That's on gloss paper and how much darker that is, but I've enhanced it slightly to bring the lights out. This is on ordinary cartridge paper, and there's one of the original just on gloss paper, and you see how much darker that is than when I've lightened it up to bring some of these details out. So I'm going to use a mixture of the whole lot. You can also see how there's a slightly bluer tint in places here and warmer in others that might be rather fun to play with. So I might add a bit of colour in just to bring up those moods a bit later on. But let's just get going with charcoal. First thing I'm going to do is to mark off my quarters and eighths as usual, just to see where things are coming, and then I'll work straight into it. Well, I could keep it at that, but I want to go a little bit darker, so I'm going to use, now I've got those lovely soft tones, what is a bit of black pastel. It's still a soft pastel, it's still a very hard pastel, all the cheaper ones. And I might put a little bit of lighter colour in with the soft pastel, we'll see. Let's see how we go. I've got my darkest picture now, so I'm going to just come into here with some of this darker pastel and just see if I can... We haven't got to stick to rules of regulation, so nothing to say it all had to be done with charcoal. Charcoal in itself would have been nice just as it was on this, I must admit. Just the charcoal alone, the paper has its own lovely feeling. But I don't see why we have to stick with any particular rules or way. I don't want hard, rough, lovely smooth darks. So I'm deliberately going to lose a lot of the texture. So now we're playing the dark of the pastel against the lighter charcoal. Now the charcoal was lovely and soft and sensitive, but I think we can equally enjoy the darks of this pastel interior. And make it a mixed medium piece. Just let the work flow with what it requires, not necessarily what we think it might feel enforcing upon it. Really starting to work into it. I could have finished it very simply just with charcoal and chalk. I wanted to really take it that stage further. By using my fingers in directional strokes I can start to almost pull rays of light through this look. Get this lovely effect of these heavy sort of rainy clouds up here. And I think I'm just starting to get the picture into the sort of form that I see from the photograph that I want to take, the directions I want to go with this. You can almost see pinks in this from the warmth of the charcoal, although it's very tempting to bring some more warmth back in. This down here needs to be a bit darker just on this bit. Kind of blend it through it more, then come back with the lights just a little bit again to bring the lights back again. Again, it's got the softness back. Now let's pick up my white chalk, and it'd be nice to come in with some cream actually, but just for the fun, I'm going to put a little bit of cream in just to see what happens. It does work. It plays nicely against the... As I say, I shouldn't have to stick to rules and regs. If I want to do something, I should be able to do it. It's nice and soft. I'm using a little bit of cream pastel now rather than the white, just to add a little bit of warmth to these. And we just take it as far as we want to, I guess. I have to be careful now because I'm starting to add more colour. I could start to go all over the place with this colour and it'll become a whole new beast. But it's not quite so sooty with that charcoal and black pastel. Oh, my back! Get down there. It would be quite interesting to go back and do it again just with charcoal, because I think there'd be a lot more delicacy just with the charcoal. Well, there we are, the final work, and probably looks a bit darker on this screen than it does in reality. Closer look, shall we?